We then spent a bit of time on innovation, and the simple truth is that's where you are going to find a lot of your life at work. You're going to spend a lot of time on innovation, on improving systems, on improving products. And the simple truth is it's also where you're going to find some sort of future career for yourself, whether it is on your own or whether it is in an organization. But the non-negotiable from an employee perspective now is that you innovate. And in order to be able to innovate, we need to understand the various innovation options, but we also need to understand the hard, cold realities of how innovation works, and that we did in the previous learning unit. We're now looking at corporate level strategy. So in terms of corporate level strategy, you would imagine that here we're looking at, and it's not the best example because they're in so much trouble at the moment, we're looking at Massmart Walmart. Remember the sort of 50-50% ownership. I think they are 50-50. Massmart Walmart, and now we're looking at the various divisions under Massmart Walmart, and it would be definitely your macro, it would be your game, it would be your Boxer, all those specific stores that were attacked during the crazy looting from a while ago. It's also interesting to see in terms of Massmart Walmart how they are again repurposing game, because game is not making sense. Remember, they became a greengrocer and then they lost their way and they lost their focus. It appears that where initially game was going to be an upmarket macro, they are now going to make it a mini macro. So the thinking is it's going to have no frills. It is macro on a smaller scale and in towns where normally macro is slightly on the outskirts of towns because of the land requirement. So it's going to be very interesting to see where the game survives. We will also remember that one of the victims of Walmart coming in and the restructuring in terms of Massmart Walmart was Dion Wired. Dion Wired, an upscale shopping experience. We can also put Edcon in there, and Edcon with Edgar's and a range of other divisions underneath. I spoke earlier in the here about having a look at Tata and how diversified Tata is and the number of divisions and subdivisions under Tata. Tata, a global player with anything from tea farms to manufacturing steel, to manufacturing heavy equipment, to high-end hotels, to IT support, to management support, consulting services, etc. So here we look at this level. We look specifically at the role of the corporate parent, and you're going to hear me use the term corporate parent a couple of times. There the objectives are. You can have a glance at it. And then we also are going to look at some of the strategies that we adopt at that higher level. So here we talk about, and you'll hear the terms being used depending on the textbook. We're talking about our grand strategies. So our generic strategies are those strategies that essentially allow us to compete in a particular industry. Our grand strategies are those that are strategic in nature, that look at the organization in its entirety relative to the environment, and it's the stuff that ultimately will determine where an organization heads down the line. And these are the kinds of strategies, if you imagine that your vision is there, you've seen this a couple of times, your mission statement is there, your value statement is there, these are these guys here. They are the things that take us to our long-term objectives. So these grand strategies, where our long-term objectives act as the endpoint, the grand strategies are the things that take us to those long-term objectives. All right, so let's look at corporate level strategy. Really, it is about our strategic goals. So as I said, we have our vision, our mission statement, our value statement. We understand that our strategic intent will fit into that. And then when we get to our long-term objectives, we've spoken a number of times about in terms of how these long-term objectives are now established in terms of our balanced scorecard measures. And the balanced scorecard measures will always, you'll remember this, relate to finance, relate to customer, will relate to learning and growth, and will relate to internal business processes. Now, these long-term objectives, as I've said, become the endpoint to your grand strategy. So our finance in terms of return on equity, in terms of profitability, our customer in terms of customer return rates, market share growth, although market share growth is put under finance, sometimes learning and growth, our innovation and the stuff that make us efficient in terms of productivity would fit into this level. And in reality, the things that take us to these long-term objectives will always be our grand strategies. So this is the level that we're working at, and we think of it as the vision for the organization in its entirety. The kinds of things that we have to discuss from a corporate strategy. The first one is what and how many businesses should we essentially be operating in, as well as industries. So if you're a Tata type organization, you are operating in a range of industries. You have a footprint in a number of industries, and the focus in terms of those industries are often quite diverse, because we know that when one industry suffers, another one often performs, depending on the macro realities of the world at that particular point in time. So what organizations have learned is, in order to mitigate some of their risk, is they diversify across a range of industries. One of the key elements, though, in terms of diversification is that your core business at a corporate level needs to be well known and needs to be focused on. And then the second one is, in terms of us as a corporate parent, how do we create that? How do we create the 1 + 1 = 3? Now, the simple truth is, imagine Red Bull and the stuff that Red Bull is involved in. I mean, Red Bull is as much an energy drink as coffee is an energy drink nowadays. Red Bull is a highly diversified, focused on sport, focused on events type organization. And it's an example of branding that has gone incredibly well for an organization. But what Red Bull does is that their core business, and I know they still manufacture energy drinks, but that their core business is around sport, is around having a footprint in a range of sporting areas, of sporting events, etc. But from a diversity perspective, they will have a footprint in everything from drone racing right through to Formula One. I don't know if anyone has seen the drone racing, but the skill set of those youngsters who race those drones and the way that Red Bull promotes that as a sport is absolutely insane. So Red Bull, as their core business, would have something related to sport. Does anyone here still drink Red Bull? I have to admit, in my entire life, I've not completely finished a single energy drink. I don't get the idea of energy drinks. Is it expensive, Tim? What is Red Bull now? Z, you also drink? Okay. I don't. And the Monster people here, who drinks Monster? I believe they're properly unhealthy. So I've never really. 2080 rand, yeah, no, is that for a 250 ml? I have to admit, I don't get the idea of sporting drinks. I have ADHD, so honestly, my energy levels are normally through the roof, and I'm bouncing off the wall. So for me, an energy drink might just put me over the top. I might get fired for thinking I'm a pinball in a classroom. So the simple truth is, we see the fact that these business units need to create synergy. In terms of Massmart, Walmart, easy to see the synergy between macro and now what will be mini macros, your Game and Boxster and all of those other stores, and your Builders Express type organizations. There is a definite sense of bulk purchases, and each with their own purposes within the broader organization. And then in terms of the actual headquarters, what should be our portfolio of businesses? If you're Tata, your portfolio is wide. It is across a range of industries. It has a significant footprint in a number of areas, and you compete across a range of nations. In terms of the strategies that we normally look at, we will always have our growth strategies. So you'll remember from last year, in terms of our growth strategies, we did that, and at that stage we called it a TOES matrix. It's now actually called what it should be, the SWOT matrix, so just in reverse, where we ended up with our strategies based on our strengths and opportunities, our strengths and threats, our weaknesses and opportunities, and our weaknesses and threats. You'll remember from second here we did this, and the truth is, in terms of those, is that if you are there, you adopt highly competitive strategies, in your face, try and beat me at this. You attack head on in terms of your competitors. Here we often adopt a hold and maintain approach, where although it is still a positive strategy, it is really about defending and protecting the market share, and then turning your weaknesses into strengths and using the opportunities to do that, and turning your threats into opportunities using your strengths. These here are your negative strategies, those areas where weaknesses intersect with threats. We have those defensive strategies. So whether it's a retrenchment strategy, a turnaround strategy, we'll talk about liquidation as well, and bankruptcy as a strategy. The truth is that organizations like the idea of playing in those waters there, but the reality is every so often you need to consolidate. Every so often you need to admit defeat, and you need to step away. Give me examples in the broader Edcon portfolio, businesses that they've got rid of over the last couple of years. Businesses that Edcon has gotten rid of over the last couple of years. Remember, they also had something called Boardmans under them. They got rid of Boardmans. I think they also got rid of Jet, I think, at some point. So they've seen that these are areas that don't make sense. I can't remember whether Jet is still part of Edcon. I'm sure somebody can check for me. But definitely Boardmans got rid of. They got rid of some of their clothing lines. They got rid of some of their suppliers in terms of what they present in their stores. But the truth remains that you want to be operating there. But companies like Edcon, companies like, in fact, again now Massmart, Walmart, often spend time in the defensive strategy area. So if we look here, what it entails, always going to be our broader purpose mission. Now remember, when we talk purpose and mission, to me it's the same thing. Whether you write a purpose statement or whether you write a mission statement, I would like to think that there should be a vision in there as well. But it's to indicate why we exist. Why are we here? What exactly are we trying to achieve? And then it's also about our overall strategies. And in a world where Amazon dominates, Amazon will have significant growth strategies. We now see growth and diversification strategies with Amazon looking at their own vehicle brand and a range of other things that they're moving into. We see it with Google and also the Google car and Google in terms of their offerings. The specific decisions that we have to take at a corporate level, as I've already said, what and how many businesses and industries. What do we specialize in? What do we want to make our core business? So if you're Red Bull, your core business is sport and being present in a range of sports. Key, though, is that there. Are we fighting in the right territories? What are our competencies? What are our resources in terms of the inside-out approach, in terms of stretching our competencies and resources? Are we in the right markets? Are we actually in the right industry? Are we in the right business? And then, yeah, as I've said, the vision in terms of the future. Business level strategies, and we've discussed this already. What is our source of competitive advantage? Is it cost? Is it differentiation? Is it focus? Or is it a combination of those? And one of the more popular ones more recently is the idea of best value, where you provide great quality for a great cost. Who are our competitors, and how do we want to take our competitors on? How are they doing? And then, yeah, in terms of focus or your broad market